Hey everybody, so we're back again for another off-season recap video, and today we're going to be looking at the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis, the 2019 Stanley Cup champions, had a very good regular season last year, winning the Western Conference, but then a very disappointing first-round exit in the playoffs at the hands of the Vancouver Canucks. So they head into this offseason. They didn't make a ton of changes, but the ones that they did make were pretty darn big. And before we fully get into it, I just ask that you please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you haven't yet. Both of those things help out so much and are greatly appreciated. But let's take a look here at the Blues' notable changes this offseason. Again, there weren't a ton that affected the NHL roster, a lot of AHL moves, but as far as the NHL roster goes, you have the big one clearly is Alex Pietrangelo on his way out, hit free agency and goes to the Vegas Golden Knights, and Torrey Krug coming in. So the Blues lose their captain. They lose their number one defenseman and a guy who is really a top 5 defenseman in the NHL. Alex Pietrangelo is a massive loss for the St. Louis Blues. This is a guy who is right up there with the Victor Hedmans, Roman Josis, John Carlson. He's a top 5 D-man in the NHL, and that's a big loss for St. Louis. Now, they do bring in Torrey Krug, and Torrey Krug is a nice addition to this lineup, and he certainly is going to help soften the blow of losing Pietrangelo. But Krug is not a direct replacement because Krug brings a lot of offense and he's going to put up a ton of points. Actually, I think Torrey Krug makes the St. Louis Blues power play better than what it was before, certainly even with Pietrangelo before he got there. Torrey Krug is going to put up numbers for the St. Louis Blues. The problem, though, comes defensively. Torrey Krug is not the defensive player that Alex Pietrangelo is, and that's why it's not like a 1-for-1 wash here. And the Blues did lose a little bit here because Krug is not going to replace what Alex Pietrangelo brought to that team defensively as a shutdown D-man. He just isn't. That's not Torrey Krug's game. That's not what he does. He's a smaller offensive defenseman who puts up points. And it's certainly, bringing Krug definitely wasn't a bad move from a St. Louis standpoint. It certainly helps them deal with the loss of Pietrangelo, but losing Pietrangelo is still absolutely a loss. They also lost their backup goaltender, Jake Allen, in a cap dump move. They traded him to Montreal, which now leaves Ville Husso as the backup goaltender to Jordan Binnington. Husso has no real NHL experience, so it remains to be seen how that goes. And they brought in depth forward Kyle Clifford to come in and play on the fourth line wing. He kind of replaces what they lost when Pat Maroon left for Tampa Bay after the Stanley Cup winning season. Last year, they didn't really have that protector in the lineup, that tougher guy that watches out for his teammates. And I think adding Clifford is a nice addition to this Blues fourth line because it brings that element back into the lineup. And Clifford is a guy who's never been shy about dropping the gloves, always physical, always there to protect his teammates, but also can play. And Clifford's still in the league for a reason because he can play. He's statistically a good fourth liner. He can chip in with some offense. He's a good, responsible defensive forward. His analytic numbers are good. Kyle Clifford's a very solid fourth line player. So that is a nice depth addition to the Blues lineup, I think. And I like what he brings to the table a lot. He's one of my favorite fourth liners in the league. But like I said, not a lot of moves for the St. Louis Blues that really affect the NHL roster, but the ones that they did make were pretty big, especially with Pietrangelo and Krug. And now I'm going to bring in a special guest for this video, longtime subscriber to the channel and St. Louis Blues fan, Jack L52. He's does a very, very good job of talking about the Blues offseason, how they look heading into next season, and what their roster is like right now. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Jack, and he can take it away.
Hi, I'm Jack L52. I'm a Blues fan, obviously, and John asked me if I could give out my opinion about how the Blues did this offseason, and that's what we'll start with right now. So the Blues this offseason had a lot of question marks going in the offseason. So in the playoffs, the team lost against the Canucks in 6 games. And in the bubble, they never seemed right. Binnington in that playoffs had an 0-5 record with an .850 save percentage. Ouch. And that's despite the fact that the Blues outplayed Vancouver through most of the series. They just got out-goaltended. And also some bad defensive miscues as well caused them to lose. So in the offseason, the Blues traded Jake Allen to Montreal for a couple of draft picks. You could see that coming. He's going to be UFA next year, and the expansion draft's coming up, so understandable. Also, the Blues lost their captain and one of my favorite players, Alex Pietrangelo, and that is a massive loss for the Blues. Although signing Torrey Krug on the blue line, I love it. As a person who roots for Boston as well, pretty good player. And I mean, 5-on-5, he's okay, but power play wise, yeah, the Blues power play should be fine with Krug on it. And let's get to the point. Now, before we start, I want to make this pretty clear right off the bat. Alexander Steen, there's a very high likelihood he will not play this season at all. And I've heard rumors that it might be his groin or his hip that's the problem, which if you don't have those, that's a really big issue. So hopefully Steen's okay, but I'm going to take a bet and say he probably doesn't play this year. And Vladimir Teresenko, of course, had shoulder surgery in the offseason. He won't be reevaluated till February, so there's a good chance that he may only play half the season this year. And I'm not betting that he'll return to form based on how he didn't look right in the playoffs. And it's important because you don't want to lose all that goal scoring. And having a team do all this goal scoring for years in a row is very difficult to ask for a team. And right now, I'm looking at the depth chart. So Ryan O'Reilly obviously is the best player on the Blues right now. With Pietrangelo gone, it's Ryan O'Reilly. And Ryan O'Reilly is one of my all-time favorite players. He will be till the day he retires. He is so incredibly good. And now he only had 12 goals the past year. I expect those numbers will be higher. He just didn't shoot the puck a lot this year. Also, given the fact that he's now counted on a lot as well as all that, that's important. Also, with Pietrangelo leaving, I expect that Ryan O'Reilly will take the captaincy. And with Steen probably not likely playing, it's probably not going to go to him. So I think it will most likely go to Ryan O'Reilly this season. But let's go to the forward start off. So the first line I have Zach Sanford, Ryan O'Reilly, and David Perron. Perron and O'Reilly, great together. I love that pair together. Perron's been so much better with Ryan O'Reilly than anybody else in his career. It's just worked out so well. And then you have Zach Sanford in there. Personally, I wouldn't put him on the first line, but he works well with them, so I'm okay with that. It's just the consistency is a little bit shaky. The second line, I have Schwartz, Schenn, and Robert Thomas on the right wing. So Thomas is going to play on that right wing, I would think. Now, he's more of a setup guy than he is a goal scorer, so we'll see how that goes. But it's an interesting situation the Blues are in. And then the third line, I have Sammy Blais, Tyler Bozak, and Oscar Sundqvist. And your fourth line, Kyle Clifford, Ivan Barbashev, and Jordan Kyrou. Now, actually, I think I take that back. I would actually put Kyrou on the third line and Oscar Sundqvist on the fourth line. But yeah, your forward core is pretty deep. I'm not concerned with the forwards any bit. Now, the question is, can the bottom six score consistently is a big question mark, because in the playoffs, they didn't really show up, but I'm not super concerned about the forwards. With Tarasenko out, it's not really the worst thing in the world. And our extra forwards are Jacob Del Rose and Mackenzie McEachern. They should be fine. Now, Clem Costan, of course, a couple of years ago, he was drafted. I remember how much hype there was around him, and he dropped in the draft, and there's a lot of excitement the Blues guys stealing him. But his stock took a hit after he got drafted, so hopefully, he can make it. We'll see if he does, but it's kind of up in the air on whether or not he'll make it. But that's not the important part. It's the defense. So in the offseason, like I said earlier, Alex Pietrangelo is gone, and they signed Torrey Krug. Great. Torrey Krug is a great power play point man. 5-on-5, he gives you winces at times. I love him, but he does give you winces at times, so you don't want to overplay him, and obviously you don't want him anywhere near a penalty kill. Now, the second pair is where there's some question marks. Now, the first pair will be Torrey Krug and Colton Parayko. Parayko, I think, is a really good player. I think he can be a top number one defenseman. I do. The thing is, he doesn't have the hands. His hands aren't good enough for the way that he plays. He can shoot the puck from the point really well, and he's great defensively, but his hands just aren't fast enough for his feet and for his transitions. So that's the only issue with him. But other than that, he's great. So I think that the Blues will be able to figure it out. But the question mark is, can Justin Faulk bounce back? Now, for people who know me on the live streams with John, I railed about Justin Faulk a lot this year. And part of the problem, and now that I think about it, it was mostly, I think, because he was misused a lot. He was placed on the penalty kill when he probably shouldn't be on the penalty kill, which that's going to be hard because he's getting paid a lot of money. He's being paid $6.5 million. So they're going to have to play him there, but he has to play better than he did this past year. There's no excuse for having another down season next year. The first year you can say he didn't have the chemistry and that he was playing on his offside. That's legit, but I just think it just hasn't been a great fit so far, and I want him to bounce back, but it just is looking like it won't. He just gave me a lot of, I just was yelling at my TV a lot at him last year. So hopefully he'll bounce back. And then you could either have Vince Dunn or Marco Scandella on the second pair with him. Scandella's being paid like a top 4 defenseman, but you could have Dunn up there, but Dunn doesn't get the ice time for that. So ice time tells me that Marco Scandella will play with Justin Faulk, which probably would be better for Faulk because that means he has someone covering for him. And then the third pair, Vince Dunn, they're still trying to work out a contract with him right now. And then Robert Bortuzzo is number 4. I think that Carl Gunnarsson will play more games than Robert Bortuzzo, just personally. However, there is a new kid on the block that might potentially play, and that's Scott Perunovich. Hobey Baker Award winner this past season. I don't know necessarily he's going to be Cale Makar. Cale Makar is a one of a kind, so most Hobey Baker winners are not the level of Cale Makar, but Perunovich is a pretty good defenseman, and if he can play really well, that could really help this defense a lot, cover some of the losses that they have, and hopefully that works out. Now, the goaltending is where I also have another question mark, and that's our goaltending tandem is going to be Jordan Binnington and Billy Husso. Now, obviously, Allen's gone. Allen was really good on the road this year, which is concerning. And Bennington just was average this past season. So he has to prove that he's not he's better than that, because if Husso struggles, the Blues could be in some major trouble if Billy Husso does struggle. I mean, he's done in the AHL, but you have to hope that he does well because, there's not really a whole lot behind him. I mean, I think it's Evan Fitzpatrick. Yeah, I had his name right. Good on me. He's a pretty good... He's a prospect, obviously. He's been bouncing around the AHL a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. But it's probably going to be Husso who's the backup, but you have to hope he plays well. Binnington, I think, will have a better season this past year based on the fact he had just a really awful playoffs, just to put it this way. It just seemed like every puck was going on the blocker side. But I think that Binnington will be able to figure it out. And it should be good to go. Where do I see the Blues finishing? Well, based on the fact that there's going to be a Canadian division, I'm going to take a bet and say the Blues will probably be in the same division as Tampa, Florida, Columbus, Detroit, Chicago, Nashville, and there's a possibility that either Pittsburgh or Carolina. Looking more likely Pittsburgh, but it could be Carolina, so either of those teams. I think the Blues will finish second in that division if that's the case, but that could quickly change if there are injuries to key players. If it's to depth players, it's not a big deal, but if it's to key players, that's where the Blues could be in some major trouble right away because the Blues are a team that do tend to have injuries with the way that they play. I mean, they don't miss the playoffs very often. They rarely, if ever, miss the playoffs. That's why I predict them to make the playoffs, but it could go the other way. But I am confident for the Blues this year. The Torrey Krug signing made me feel a lot better, so we'll just have to wait and see how this pans out. But overall, if the Blues will go really far, if Ryan O'Reilly has an amazing season like he's had over the past 2 years, I just can't say anything better about Ryan O'Reilly than I have. He's been so amazing for this team, and most players who come in like that, that's the first time in a while that a number one center is brought in from a trade, and he helps you win a Stanley Cup. that hasn't happened in a long time. So that's amazing that the Blues were able to pull that off. But losing Pietrangelo may I don't know if it'll take away their Stanley Cup dreams in the future, but it could definitely make it much more difficult for the Blues to repeat as champions. And we'll just have to wait and see. But hopefully, I think they'll do well, but we'll just, like I said, we'll just have to wait and see. And that's all I got to say. John, thank you for having me on, and have a great day.
I want to give a huge thank you to Jack for coming on the channel and doing this video with me. It's always great to get the perspective of a fan of the team and someone who follows them on a daily basis. So thank you very, very much, Jack. And when I look at St. Louis, I agree. I think, you know, their forward group is pretty good. I think you're going to get what you get out of their forward group. Obviously, the injuries to Steen and Teresenko hurt. Hopefully, Teresenko can come back sooner rather than later. And you know, while he may not necessarily be back to 100% in the big-time scoring Tarasenko that we're used to seeing, hopefully he can at least come back and chip in offensively and help with the goal production. Steen, like Jack said, probably out for the year. That's definitely a loss, but they have enough depth up front where that's not something that's going to really kill the Blues season. One of my biggest questions with the St. Louis Blues now is goaltending. Obviously, losing Pietrangelo hurts the defense, but Krug will step in, and they're pretty deep on defense, and they've got some good players there. I'm worried about the goaltending because Jordan Binnington had a very average regular season last year and then was just downright bad in the playoffs. And now they don't have a true NHL backup for him. Ville Husso hasn't played at the NHL level. We don't know what they have in him. That can either go really well or really bad, and that remains to be seen. Is Husso ready to be an NHL goalie? And I still have questions about Jordan Binnington. I mean, when he came into the league, he was, obviously lit it up his rookie season and won a Stanley Cup. But what is Jordan Binnington? Is he a great goaltender who had a down season last year? Or is he an average goaltender who had an extremely good first taste of the NHL and just got really, really hot and ended up carrying the team all the way to a Stanley Cup? We don't know yet with Binnington. This is a huge year for Jordan Binnington. If he plays like he did last year, were very average, or you know, God forbid how he did in the playoffs where he was just downright terrible, the Blues could be in big trouble. They need him to get back to being the Jordan Binnington that he was when he first came into the league and that elite high-end NHL goaltender. I don't know what you're going to get out of Binnington. I don't know what he is. You know, we haven't seen enough of him. He had that really hot stretch and he won a Stanley Cup and he looked like a superstar goalie. And then last season happened and you're like, oh, he's kind of average. Was last year a bad year, or was last year what he is and the year before was just a really good streak? We don't know. So that's a big question for this team without a doubt. I have questions about the St. Louis Blues heading into this season. They're going to be a playoff team, I would think, and we don't know what the divisional alignments are going to be, so that kind of changes things somewhat. But I think they're going to be a playoff team. The Blues are almost always a playoff team. But are they a first-place team again like they were last year? I almost don't think so. I think we're going to see them drop back more towards like third place, somewhere around there, second, third, fourth, somewhere in there in the division. And, you know, it totally depends on, you know, how they're playing, how they do in the playoffs. But I think we're going to see a little bit of a step back with the St. Louis Blues. With Pietrangelo gone, with a lot of question marks in goal, with Tarasenko hurt, I think, you know, we're going to see a little bit of a step back with St. Louis this coming season. And while it's not going to be enough to knock them out of the playoffs altogether or anything like that, I don't think they're going to be like the Stanley Cup winning St. Louis Blues. But again, that's just my opinion, and it remains to be seen how it actually all works out. But with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon merchandise store and donation link are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.